all is forgiven. Everyone is a villain, but don't call me a killer. I keep my mind on a mission, cutting ties if they switching. Double life, double vision.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 773 with our review of Trap. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we're returning to the theaters to talk about a new M. Night Shyamalan film, a little film called Trap. This is a film that I found out exists a week ago, I think. It's not often, I think, that we're sitting down to watch a movie, to record an episode, see a brand new trailer, and then find out that that's the movie that's coming out the following weekend. But
right.
Was that the same experience you had with Trap, Steven?
Yeah, I think I first learned that it existed when watching Deadpool vs. Wolverine, or Deadpool and Wolverine,
yeah,
whatever it's called. But I mean, that seems par for the course for M. Night, right? He kind of flies under the radar and does these like low to mid budget things that just pop up, and it's like, surprise, M. Night's here, which is kind of fun. You know, I feel like no one else really has that cachet anymore to be able to just like drop a movie on you a week early and like guarantee some level of audience. I don't know how well this movie did, but at least you and I were both hooked from the premise, I think.
yeah. I think you know, we've talked about this in the past, but kind of with the way the world has gone and sort of the way our lives have gone lately, it feels a little bit like we're trying to figure out what we're going to watch after we finish recording the previous week. We're like, oh yeah, let's look at what comes out next week. Let's figure it out. But this is one where I was like, we're definitely, like before we started recording, I was like, we're definitely seeing Trap next week, right?
Yeah, totally. I also feel like Josh Hartnett, just like him being in Oppenheimer last year, kind of made everyone perk up like, wait a minute, Josh Hartnett is still a thing. And so seeing him star in another movie, it felt like, yeah, we have to watch this.
So yeah, I think it's safe to say we were at least a little bit stoked walking into this film.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, so what is the last M. Night Shyamalan movie you saw? Did you see Knock at the Cabin?
I did. I believe you were out during when that came out. You were not around, so we didn't do a review of it, I don't think. But yes, it is a film that I saw.
Okay. Not the biggest fan, it sounds like.
At the very least, I did my Green Knight thing where I went and started consuming a bunch of stuff about the original text to see like what was going on, what were the decisions that were made for this film. But yeah, it was one that I would have loved to talk about, but I did not care for it.
I see, yeah, because I did not see that, and I saw Old on a plane. And it was so stilted, I was like wondering if I was watching a dubbed version, like for content or something. Like I think the last time I've really loved an M. Night Shyamalan movie was Split, honestly. But still, he's an interesting enough filmmaker that I always want to see what he does. But I did not go into this movie thinking, hell yeah, this is going to be great. You know, I feel like there's a coin flip with his movies, and I was ready to flip the coin.
Well, Stephen, should we find out whether that film came up heads or tails?
Sure.
All right. Let's take a listen to the trailer for Trap and then come back and give everybody a review.
I gotta go to the bathroom.
Okay, Dad.
2514 can transmit on text.
What's with all the police everywhere? I'm not supposed to tell. You know the butcher? The freaking nut job that goes around chopping people up? The feds heard that he's gonna be here today. So they set up a trap for him. This whole concert, it's a trap. They're watching all the exits, they're checking everyone that leaves. There's no way to get out of here. I've never felt this before. I feel out of control.
Shoot left. Where should I put her?
Thank you.
This individual that we're searching for won't panic. He's realized he can't get out. He's going to try to cause chaos.
Dad, what are you doing? You're acting weird.
This dude is next level insane.
What's happening?
I think you're looking for me.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. Sorry.
How you all doing? You having fun? Woo! Come closer. What's going on, Daddy?
Open the goddamn door!
I can't get away. I can't stop. I'll just do this one last one. Enjoy the rest of the concert.
All right, so that was the trailer for Trap. Now, the description on IMDb acts as though they don't want you to know a very important part of the story, which is the selling point of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're talking about the fact that Josh Hartnett is the serial killer,
Yeah.
definitely the trailer that we saw gave that away already. I wished it hadn't, I thought, before watching the movie, because I was like, why couldn't that be a big reveal? But it definitely revealed it, and everyone knows it going in to see this.
100%. It is the selling point of this film, but the description on IMDb reads, a father and his teen daughter attend a pop concert only to realize that they've entered the center of a dark and sinister event. Literally the selling point of this film is, what if a serial killer showed up to a pop star concert where it was actually an elaborate ruse trying to capture him, and how would he handle himself in that situation? So that is the way we are going to talk about this story.
Yeah.
We are not going to hide the fact that Josh Hartnett is the butcher, and we're going to talk. We're not going to go into spoilers about how he actually deals with the situation until potentially a spoiler section at the end. But to start, at least, we have to at least divulge that, because that is the reason we attended this, and I assume it's the reason why anybody going to see this film is attending the film. So, Stephen Miller, what did you think of Trap?
Yeah, so we talked about flipping that coin, seeing what would happen, and I would say this coin landed right on its edge when I flipped it. I thought this movie was absolutely 100% okay. I expressed to you last week, I think after we finished recording, that I felt like the trailer gave too much away. Like, I would have loved to see a movie where over time we realize that Josh Hartnett is not just a father who's worried for his daughter, but is actually the serial killer, right? You could imagine a movie that does that really well. And after seeing it, I feel like I was mostly wrong. Like, Shyamalan does find plenty of ways to surprise us, even with having that big reveal front-loaded already. Like, there is a lot more happening in this movie than the kind of ultra-confined cat-and-mouse thing that I thought it was going to be. The problem is I don't know if any of those more things are good. I think the central premise of this movie continues to be the best thing about it, even as we'll talk about in spoilers, it kind of veers away from that premise at a certain point. Moment to moment, I think this is a fun story. I like seeing the way Josh Hartnett's character tries to assess the situation, tries to escape, and I think it's a fresh take on a cat and mouse game that all of this is going on while he has to be a good dad to his teenage daughter, right? Like, I think that is a fun wrinkle, is he is desperate while also needing to seem like he's happy to be there. And how much is he going to let his relationship with his daughter outweigh his desire to not get caught? It's a very fun idea, and it's also a very M. Night Shyamalan idea in this, like, movies about being parents thing that I feel like he's been doing for a while now. And I liked it. A lot of people talk about how amazing Josh Hartnett is in this movie, that it's a revelation and that he's back. And I don't want to be a wet blanket on that, because he's definitely captivating in this movie. Like, he holds it together for sure. And unlike everyone else in M. Night Shyamalan's movies, there's a reason for him to speak as stiltedly as he does, which is kind of the saving grace of it. But there's still a lot of fakeness and awkwardness in this portrayal to me. And even though I know you can say this is a serial killer, therefore everything is forgivable, I was not quite as hot on him as I feel like a lot of the internet is after seeing this movie. There are some moments that I'm like, oh my God, you're crushing it. And there are other moments where he's like figuring out how to escape and then turn to his daughter and puts on a big smile. And I'm like, that was just not very, that was just odd acting. I would not say that was like masterful gambit, acting.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I don't know how you could play this character perfectly because it is a somewhat silly story, and M. Night does make a lot of people give a lot of exposition in that classic way that he likes to do in movies that just cannot possibly be sold as authentic.
Yeah.
I think my biggest issue with this movie that we can maybe save until spoilers to unpack is I think if you think about the premise with any level of depth, it falls apart. The non-spoilery version of that I'm willing to say now is, how does he know that just because he gets stopped, he is going to get caught? I don't feel like the movie ever satisfyingly convinces me that that is the case. And that feels like a giant gap in my appreciation of the movie that could have easily been filled with an exposition dump, since clearly the director is willing to do those. It was just one thing that I couldn't turn off my Chris brain and be like, yeah, but why can't you're such a good liar, why can't you just
like the only thing that we've learned about him over the course of the film is that in any situation he will probably be able to say the correct thing, so why would he not?
Why can't you just leave out the front door?
And that's the thing, is like over the course of this film they're just talking to older men, right? Because any of the older men could potentially be the butcher. So if they show up to you and go, are you the butcher? He doesn't have to go, oh no, you caught me. He could go, what's the butcher?
Exactly. And there were things I imagined we could have learned, like about how they were going to check the phone for certain apps, or how they knew a very distinguishing fact, or there were things that would have made it work, and they just never bothered to say that. And so that is one of those things that you just have to suspend disbelief to enjoy the movie, is just assume he will get caught if he is one of the many thousands of people being stopped by police on his way out the door. But if I set that aside, I had fun with it for the most part. I think there's a lot of cleverness in this movie. I think it manages to build a surprising amount of suspense out of a foregone conclusion of a story where we already kind of know the stakes from the jump. I did not realize until after I watched the movie that the actress who plays Lady Raven is M. Night Shyamalan's daughter, Saleka Shyamalan. And I was actually going to praise her already, as like, I actually think the music is pretty good in this movie. And I was like, that is surprising that they managed to get like a whole concert worth of songs I've never heard before. Like, who was willing to donate that? So I think, I actually think she does a great job with that. And I'm glad I didn't know about the family angle, because I think it would have made my like nepotism radar be up a little bit more, and instead I found her one of the most authentic parts of the movie, honestly. I also think Ariel Donoghue, who plays Riley, like, I really love her as the teenage daughter. Like, if I feel like every adult in this world is very stilted, I feel like the teenagers in this world are incredibly authentic, and I really like her. Like I enjoyed the dynamic. And a thing that this movie pulls off for the most part is, even though you know going into this movie that Josh Hartnett is the butcher, which we know means he must be terrifying and horrible, I at least always wanted him and his daughter to connect. And I liked when he was being a good dad, and I liked when they were sharing things. And that is kind of a magic trip that the movie pulls off, similar to the way like Split and Glass and stuff make you empathize with people who are literally beasts. I think he's good at that. But the third act, which we'll get to in spoilers, I think goes off the rails in ways that are just like increasingly unbelievable and not exciting to me. And this probably has like 5 endings when it could have had 1 or 2 instead. So mixed bag. How did you feel about Trap?
Yeah, when you started talking about the coin flip, and like at the time, I didn't realize you were teeing yourself up for your own comment. But as you were about to say the comment, I knew exactly where you were going, because one of the things I was thinking of is a lot of films that are all about, like, that have an elevator pitch that is great they can walk this fine line between like being cheesy or hokey and being like genuinely really, really good, and finding that balance is the key to making a good film of this type. And I think what I was going to say is that he doesn't just walk the line, he just ties himself up in the line and stays right there and isn't willing to, like, the highs are not elevated enough to drag the rest of the film over the line, and the bad things are sort of like, you're like, is this intentionally cheesy or is it kind of great? But I think ultimately I find myself just stuck right in the middle, as you were saying, and kind of like not understanding it. This premise is so good, but as you said, if you think about it at all, it starts to fall apart, where you're like, the idea is great. Like, this as an elevator pitch is amazing, but I feel you need a lot of people coming together to flush out the actual plan that the authorities had in this film, because this film exists in a world where the clear and present danger rules don't apply. like I feel like the amount of potential danger you cause by surrounding an arena full of people with SWAT teams and stuff like that is like an obvious. You're obviously going to cause more harm than good if you're trying to do that. There are better ways to try to flush out a killer, right?
Right.
The other thing is, and this is again, not again, for the first time. I mean, again, I do this sometimes, but I think that I was expecting a little bit more from this film. Kind of from the trailer, what kind of excited me is sort of this idea of, imagine a Dexter-like character with a dark passenger and this compulsion to kill, but instead of being able to point it at certain things, he hasn't found that outlet for it, right? Then he gets put into a situation where he knows he thinks he won't be able to make it out, so he's just trying to kill as many people as he can before he gets caught, right? That's kind of what I thought we were going to get from this. Like, in the trailer, you see some things happen, some involving stairs, some involving fry
misleading things maybe in the trailer.
Yeah, so what I was kind of expecting is a person who is acting out his compulsions in a crowded arena while trying to avoid the authorities. And what we actually get is a film where Josh Hartnett is never actually technically in danger of being caught. Statistically, at some point in time, somebody will probably try to stop and question him, as you said, but it's really just him trying to figure out what is actually happening around him. It doesn't feel like, this isn't The Fugitive, but inside a sports arena, right? This is just a guy who's like, oh, I don't want to get questioned. What can I do to not get questioned? Which is inherently less stakes than sort of other things, right? Like it's like whenever there are people on walkie-talkies saying, he will never make it out of this arena and he won't be able to do it. We have covered all the exits. It's like, you haven't shown me that you've actually made it so that he's truly trapped. He's just ever cautious as he's going around. So I like what this film is trying to do, but it really doesn't achieve a level of me thinking that, like, oh my God, this premise was used so well. Couldn't believe this. Like, there's something weird about the way it tried to handle what it was doing that sort of let me down a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense. And I can see why the flaw at the heart of the premise is really glaring, and it's weird because it'd be so easy to just have them say on the walkie-talkie, like, we know for sure that the killer has this tattoo, so we'll check every male who leaves for this tattoo, right? Like, there are things that would be like a one-liner that would solve the whole problem. Yeah. that they just, for some reason, don't cover. It's interesting that I did not actually have this idea from the trailer that this was going to be a movie where Josh Hartnett is acting out his like twisted desires while trying to avoid getting caught. Like, I did think maybe the arena was going to wind up being the home base where he always did these things, and so he was trying to like hide what was going on downstairs, but I didn't
Oh, like all the
I never-
butcherings take place at sports arenas?
Exactly. Yeah. Like I didn't necessarily think that this movie was going to be like, let's watch him butcher. You know, I thought it was more like watching the two-faced nature of this guy.
Yeah, so I guess for me, what I was kind of thinking of is, have you played the game or any game like it, but like the game Among Us?
No, I haven't.
But are you aware of like kind of what the premise of the game is?
I'm going to guess it's like Mafia or Werewolf.
Yeah. Or it's basically you have a bunch of people in a confined space, and one of them is a killer. And as long as you don't get caught, you can kill freely. And then as soon as somebody like finds a dead body, then it goes into this questioning stage where like you have to vote on who you think the killer is, right? So there's a bunch of games based on this. All the youths were really into Among Us for a while. But like that's kind of what I was expecting, right? Is we know they're hunting him. We know he is the butcher. He's killed like 12 people or whatever it is in this before the start of this film. We know from the trailer that he's got at least one more in the queue to be killed, and kind of expecting him to kind of like get away with it while they're hunting him as like this game that this character is playing. But it's funny too that like when you see Josh Hartnett's character perform unhinged, the most unhinged he ever is when he's talking to the other woman, the mother of the girl that his daughter is having the feud with.
Jody's mom, yeah.
Yeah. So, like, she is unhinged, and he is responding to her in a way that, like, in the context of that scene, you're like, yeah, I would be unhinged too if I was having to deal with this person,
right?
Whether or not I was also actively trying to hide from the authorities, right?
Whether I had been a serial killer going into that conversation. I would certainly leave being one.
Yeah. But it's just a different thing than I was kind of expecting going in, which is on me, I know, but it feels like what we get is actually there are moments of high stakes, right? But it feels like the high stakes are just in Josh Hartnett's head. It is him going like, oh, this is a chance where I could get caught. Not that, as you said, I will get caught in this moment.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I also think we know from the jump that he is the killer. I feel like the movie, for most of the runtime, doesn't bother to show us the behavior inside of him that would make him the killer. It shows him as a person who is trying to escape and then is masking his fear of getting caught. But there are elements of his character, like being obsessive compulsive, or being haunted by inner demons, or taking sadistic pleasure in the idea of killing someone, that I feel like, I don't want to get into spoilers, but for the vast majority of this movie, Josh isn't giving me that at all. And so the few moments, there's a lot of telling rather than showing when it comes to his character, in a way that makes it so the ratcheting up of tension, I don't know, there's just something that doesn't quite work for me about it. But again, he's getting heavily praised, so clearly his performance is working on a lot of people. For me, I was like, I buy you as a guy that is awkwardly trying to get out of a jam right now. I'm not necessarily buying you as a twisted killer who is about to get caught.
And there's even a scene, which this is like, it doesn't actually affect the plot, so sorry for the mild spoiler, but there is a point where some random other guy gets tackled by security, and then you overhear somebody else saying that, like, oh, this person has like a different thing that he thought they were here to grab him for, and that's why he ran, but he's obviously not the butcher. So like, it never feels like the stakes for Josh Hartnett are any higher than that guy who happened to be a different criminal, right? Like, Josh Hartnett could be like, oh my God, I have 5 unpaid parking tickets. If they see where I parked in that parking lot, which there's no way that parking space was going to be open that close to the arena. That was the first thing. As soon as the film started, I was like, there's no way they find that parking spot.
But that's the thing. Like, there's a lot... I'll wait for spoilers. Yeah, I won't talk about it now. There are things that feel clever about the movie that, when I think about it longer, given what it has told me, don't actually make sense anymore. But yeah, what I would say also is one thing you learn in any scientific field is it's extremely hard to prove a negative, right? Like almost impossible. Yet their whole premise rests on the idea that they will interrogate thousands of people and then immediately be like, oh, no, it wasn't the butcher. No, that wasn't the butcher. And again, I'm just like, how?
Yeah.
How do you know the guy that ran wasn't the butcher? How could you possibly know that so shortly after he tried to run? It's just a very glaring hole, I feel like, in the storyline.
Stephen, obviously, we're not getting enough of the backstory of the old woman profiler who could just look him in the eyes and know instantly it was him because of all of her many, 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 many years of profiling serial killers. Obviously, that's the answer.
But she's not meeting all of them.
I assume that anybody who they stop who has a tattoo and is maybe of the range of 30 to 40 something and is whatever, that then they move to the next step, which is put him in a chair sitting across from the old woman.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. Again, one of those things we don't see, but I guess we can assume.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting, too, if there was any sort of backstory of, like, him knowing this profiler was onto him and thinking that she does have the skills to be able to bring him in if they ever were to encounter each other, right? Mm-hmm. Because it feels like the whole movie he's constantly trying to hope she doesn't turn to the right and see him. Yeah. But, like, even if she did, all she's going to say is, has anybody checked this man yet? Like, it's not going to be like, aha, my Hartnett has come in and captured him.
Exactly. That was good. I also, this is a question that just shows that I do not engage with pop music enough. Like, I haven't been in a very big concert event in a long time. Is it normal for there to be, like, intermissions in the middle of a person's concert?
No.
Because this movie rests on the idea that happens, and I don't think even the Eras Tour had it, as far as I know.
The only time you get a break is between bands, and as far as I can tell from this film, there was an opener and then Lady Raven, and that was it.
Yeah.
So there's definitely no, like, there might be downtime for quick costume changes and stuff like that, but not like, hey, everybody, now is the perfect time to go to the bathroom. My assumption is that this is a situation where the daughter is like, oh, I don't like this song. Let's go get a t-shirt.
But she would never say that. Everything we know about her, there's no song she doesn't like. You're not a true fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, minor complaint. I mean, like, I've seen Springsteen play like 3.5-hour sets, and there was no intermission. You know, back in my day, at least, they didn't need an intermission.
Yeah. No. That's what like Jamie and I kept thinking like the entire time is like, who leaves? I mean, obviously they had seat numbers, so they weren't worried about like that. There was no pit at this concert, right? So it wasn't like, oh, we have great spots, we can't ever leave this spot, otherwise we're gonna miss something.
Yeah.
It was more of a, oh, we can just come and go as we please. This should be great.
Yeah. I have more to say, but I think it would all fit in spoilers. So I think on my end I've gotten it out. I kind of irrationally mostly liked this movie, I guess, because I don't think it really makes sense, but I did mostly enjoy myself the whole time.
Yeah. No, I for the most part did as well. It just didn't achieve the cheesy levels of high that I was hoping for. It sort of just was like, okay, I see what you did. Mm-hmm. All right. It's almost time for spoilers, Stephen. But before we go to spoilers, for those who don't want to be spoiled, we have to give them a verdict. So if you were going to give this a extra fried, a crispy original recipe, I don't know. I don't know how you descend in the level of crispies. But if you're going to give us a must-see, a record with the caveat, wait for rental, pass with the caveat, or must avoid, what would you give it?
Yeah, I guess I'm giving this like the French fry that has been like in the delivery bag for too long, and the steam has made it be like like it isn't quite crispy anymore. It's like a little wet, which is a wait for rental, obviously. Yeah. I think again the coin landed directly in the middle, and so is my review. I'm glad movies like this exist. Like, I like simple premise stories that they get to execute on. Even though I'm not as high on Josh Hartnett as I feel like the internet is, I do think he's charismatic, and I'm happy to see him like get a chance to lead something. Like, I definitely want to watch more of him. And yeah, there were things I liked about the movie. I like the child actors. I feel like that's something M. Night Shyamalan is just good at in general, is getting a good performance out of kids, you know? I also like the music in the movie. I like a bunch of things in the world building, but it also just doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah.
It's a little bit hard to sustain your thriller for that long when the core foundational idea of the whole movie doesn't make sense. So, yeah.
It's like you watch the trailer and you're like, oh my God, brilliant. And then for every second the film ticks on, you're like, wait, is this brilliant? Oh yeah, this doesn't make any fucking sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a race against the clock to see, like, will this movie finish before I decide it's stupid?
And then, as Steven said, there may be multiple endings, and every time a new ending is brought up, you're like, could be brilliant, and you're like, no, that doesn't make any sense either.
Right, but it kind of resets the clock temporarily, so maybe that's part of the genius of it.
It distracts you. But yeah, this is a wait for rental for me as well. Like, I kind of had fun with it, but to continue Steven's metaphor on the fry, this is like if you get a macho fry from Del Taco, but the person behind the counter forgets to smash the little cup at the bottom to make the open space for the steam to event, and you just get just fry soup at the bottom of that big old cup. So yeah, that is the non-spoiler review for Trap. We are going to take off to go do spoilers, but for now, Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me at Threads or Blue Sky at sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Christopher IRL at a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com, where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that. That music is going to fade up, and when that music fades out, we're going to be in full-blown spoilers for Trap, so get ready.
There's no going back once I leave it behind me. Hey, it's not all is forgiven. Everyone is a villain, but don't call me a killer. I keep my mind on a mission, cutting ties if they switching. Double life, double vision.
All right, we are back. This is spoiler territory. It's the after part of our review of M. Night Shyamalan's Trap. We are going to be talking full-blown spoilers for this film and its many endings and many additional sections of the story that continue as this film goes on. So if you don't want to be spoiled for this film, go, I guess, watch it. Wait for it to come out on streaming. Watch it then, and then come back and listen to this section of the episode. But yeah, Steven, where do you want to start?
Okay, I guess I'm going to start with a question, and then we can walk back into spoilers based on that. So, my question is, don't they frame this from the very beginning, the security guard, at least talking to him, as this entire concert is a setup? This is a trap to lure out this killer. But as we learn more about how this actually happened, like, they seed this with a bunch of things like, wow, it's amazing that these seats were still available. Wow, it's amazing that this parking space is available. You know, how lucky are we?
Yeah.
But when we get to spoilers and it is revealed how this took place, it is that Josh Hartnett's wife, Allison Pill, purposely left a ticket stub of the Lady Raven event so the FBI could find it. So he already booked the ticket before a sting operation took place. So this is not a sham or a sting operation.
Yeah, so the only... I am not in the business of defending this film.
Right.
But my only way to rationalize this, to make this make any goddamn sense, other than they wrote that line for the trailer and didn't think about it when they wrote the end of this film, or that the ending is tacked on, which may or may not be the truth here. But the only way I understand, or the only way I can rationalize it is Jamie, the dude who works at the t-shirt booth, who tells Josh Hartnett this whole background of what's actually going on. You know, the super fan of true crime mysteries,
right,
who has been following the career of the Butcher, has extrapolated, like, he has been told, hey, we think the Butcher is going to be here tonight. This is going to be set up as a trap for it. He is conflating we're taking an actual, and that's the thing too, is at the beginning we also learned that there was a Saturday and a Sunday sold out show, and they added an additional show earlier in the day on Sunday or Saturday, whichever one it is. So you could frame around the idea of like every, you know, between 30 and 50-year-old male in the greater area was given a free ticket to an extra version of the concert that showed up, you know, but, you know, like, yeah, it's stupid. It contradicts itself. But my only way to explain it is the character, Jamie, didn't know the difference.
Yeah, like, I guess the character not knowing is the only thing that works, because imagine there were no spoiler at the end. We never learned that it was actually his wife who left a ticket stub out, right? Imagine we don't know that.
Yeah.
If they had any way of catfishing him, luring him into going to the show, they would already know who he was, right? Like if they made a seat be available that was too good to be true, they know who's sitting in that seat, right? They know who bought that seat. If they made a parking space that he shouldn't be able to get that he gets, they know who parked there, right? Like, so in a sense, the fact that none of that is true made it make a little bit more sense to me, but it just like, it negates earlier things that we feel like we're learning in a way that just felt very confusing to me.
And none of the characters, I think, actually say, oh my God, can't believe we got this parking spot. I was bringing attention to it earlier because it feels like, oh yeah, it's a closed set, and they just parked there so they could shoot a shot of them leaving a car, but didn't think about how silly it is that there would just be a bunch of open parking spots in the parking lot directly next to the arena. So
right. I mean, he says something about how lucky he is to get the spot, I feel like. I kind of remember that happening, unless you just planted it in my head.
I might have incepted you, but I don't remember. But yeah, it is silly. I will. I don't know if I want to skip ahead to talking about that whole piece. I'm starting to lose my train of thought. But yeah, we'll talk about the wife's plan and what she was thinking to do, because if her whole plan was, oh my God, I think my husband is the butcher, I need to lead police there. I know. I'll break into one of his butcher spots where he is no longer using, and I'll leave half of a ripped receipt that is his receipt to let them know where he is. Why wouldn't she just use the other half of the receipt that has the last 4 digits of the credit card on it?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Anything, or maybe the order number, where they could go in and say, hi, we are the FBI. We think a killer bought a ticket to your shit. Can you please let us know the name of the person who bought these seats?
Right. Exactly. I mean, it would be so easy to, or again, and I know she doesn't want to be caught, right? She doesn't want him to know what happened. But imagine just leaving an anonymous tip like, hey, I think this person might be the butcher, right? Like, it would be so easy.
Yeah.
And presumably that's what she would do if he didn't get caught at the show, right? It's just like, try again.
Yeah.
But it is all so elaborate. And it feels like, given the presumably hundreds of people that the SWAT and FBI and police and stuff mobilized for this, they didn't do any tiny bit of legwork ahead of time to narrow down who it was. It just feels very silly to me.
But also, here's the like, talking about jumps to conclusions by the FBI. So I don't know how old Lady Raven's supposed to be, but the guy being held in the basement at the other butcher shop is definitely not wildly different age than Lady Raven, right? So
probably not.
We can assume that the butcher is butchering like teens to young
early
20s. Yeah. Like he's it's not like he's killing people his own age. He is specifically abducting and killing younger people that he can take pleasure in torturing or whatever it is that he does.
I kind of feel like one of the victims was an old lady. I thought the one that what's his face, the employee, the security guard, is like getting a kick out of showing him was an older person.
Oh, but yeah, in some cases it was like an entire family. So kids are involved as well. But here's my point. Let's pretend like we find an abandoned house whose door is left open, and we go in.
I see where you're going with this.
And there's and let's pretend we do find a torn stub from a ticket to a concert. Would we immediately jump to the conclusion that, oh my God, the butcher must have a daughter who really, really loves Lady Raven and we should go there? Or do you think one of his victims may have wanted to go to a Lady Raven concert as well, and that ticket was part of the victim's everything that person had on their person.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we don't. I guess we don't have the. We don't have the scene where the old woman looked up all the missing persons, found out if they had bought tickets to Lady Raven, determined that none of them had, and then said, "Aha! Then I deduce this ticket must have belonged to the killer."
Yeah, it's all very silly. So let's jump back to, I guess, the first, what I would say, twist of this movie. It's less a twist in terms of, oh my God, I didn't, you surprised me, and more the plot went in a direction I wasn't predicting. And that is the moment when Josh Hartnett decides to tell Lady Raven that he is the butcher, and pivot this movie from I am hiding my identity to this is now a power struggle, right, between two people. Yeah. First of all, given everything we said about the lack of any reason to think he would have been caught if he had just been interrogated by police, I'm going to say that was a horrible choice on his part. Like, an unbelievably bad choice. Like, there is no... Like, what did he think was going to happen? Like, she drops him off at his car and then doesn't just immediately go tell the FBI lady, this is everything I know about the person who is the butcher. Like, his life is still over, right? Like, I don't know what he thinks is going to happen.
And that's why it feels almost brilliant, right? And like, I know you're still talking about the moment of decision and not like the moments following it, but there is a moment where it's like, if he can just get out, then this is totally him having the power. But as she starts to assert her power over the situation, that's when I'm like, oh, it's getting good now. Because
story-wise, it makes it fun. Like, that is a breath of fresh air in the movie.
But yeah, to your point, I think the only idea is when the assistant woman who is like, yep, you could definitely go out the back. It's cool. You just have to pass this line of armed men who are going to check you and do a little security check. I think he just, at that point, he feels that like it'll be too suspicious that this one guy went out a different way. I don't know. It's definitely him making a mistake, him panicking, even though the profiler said he's not somebody who would panic. It definitely feels like he's panicked. For a second, I thought he was going to go into the security room and murder everyone in there. But that's not the movie that we were watching.
Right. I thought he might try to kill Lady Raven, and then that would cause a distraction or something that would let him get out.
Or at least take her hostage in a way where he's allowed to leave because he has Lady Raven hostage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. It just, like, I like it from the dynamics of the movie perspective. Like, I like when it pivots into Lady Raven playing this game with him. It's just that even then, when I think about it too hard, it falls apart. Because in this moment, she knows who he is right now. She is exerting her power by suggesting she goes and visits the house, and then comes inside and everything. And that's all fun to watch. But the best thing she could do is just leave and then immediately tell everyone who he is, right? Yeah. And he wants her to leave. Like, he is also not thinking, oh, come with us. I am going to kill you, and then no one will know who I am anymore. Like, it is a weird thing where it's like game theory, but both people are making the wrong move.
But yeah, so
in the same direction.
At that point in time, obviously, once he says what the address is, then she could just leave and tell anybody, right? Before that, because it's a while before we get to that point, right? Because what's interesting is he can't just kill the guy in the basement, because then she can just go, that's the fucking butcher, Right. But like, it's a total farce because he has zero power at all. He is just bluffing the whole time, because if he kills the guy, she has him. If he doesn't kill the guy, he has to just do whatever she says. So at this point, he is completely lost. He is failing all over the place, even though he can just apparently like sneak out of vehicles that are crowded by crowds of people and nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I guess the only thing stopping him was his daughter at the concert venue, because otherwise he could walk through walls and do anything he needs to do. Yeah,
because and that's the thing is, in theory, the last thing is he is sure he could just walk away and get away, right? He's sneaky enough he could just disappear. but he also likes being a dad and wants to maintain what he has, his family life. He is a person who is about that dual sort of life that he lives.
Right.
So it's like, but he's so far out of the bounds of being in control that he just never returns to it after this point. It just gets more and more unhinged. And that's probably why people are celebrating his character, is watching his descent into madness as he realizes there's nothing that he can do.
Which is fun, like the eye twitches, the added level of adrenaline that he has. Like I did enjoy all of that. I think it plays its hand a little bit too aggressively when he returns for ending number 4 or whatever, and is in the kitchen with Alison Pill having the like, let's explain everything that happened between us. And at that point, he's giving the monologue of like, I've always had this monster inside of me. I like doing this. Why did you find out about it? How did you know? And none of that worked for me at all, honestly. Like on an emotional level, I was just like, this is stilted and not well written. You know, that was my feeling.
That's the moment at the time where I was like, with just different writing, I would have been totally on board with she suspected an affair and that led to her turning in the butcher accidentally or even on purpose. But like the idea that, like in her head, she thought, I know how to bring him down. Make sure the authorities know he's going to a concert, but not who he is.
Yeah.
like at this point, she could just call the FBI and be like, hey, profiler woman, I thought my husband was cheating. Turns out he's just the butcher. Can you please come arrest him at our house? It's like she wanted plausible deniability because she knew he's so crafty that he would escape custody, which he does at the end of this film. But you know what I mean? Like, it's just like a weird thing where it's like the character seems to be privy to information post credits that like informs her behavior in a way that doesn't really make sense.
Right. Well, and also, again, if she is afraid of the idea that he will hurt her, why reveal in the kitchen that she was behind the FBI knowing about this, right? Like he figures it out somehow because he's so perfect. He couldn't have possibly left a trace, I guess. But again, just character motivations don't really make sense when you think about them very much in this movie. Now, her choosing to stay home alone and talking with the profiler right before that, are we meant to believe after the end of this movie that was a setup, like she was the bait to lure him back in?
I think so, because the profiler's like, we'll be right outside, blah 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 blah, and it feels like it was that she knew, because in her infinite wisdom, she knew exactly every move he was going to make, except for which seat he would purchase at the concert.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just seemed.
I really didn't think about that part. Like the fact that a ticket stub existed has so much more information.
Yeah. It's like I liked the idea that the wife figured it out and led the police to him, but like there's so many places you could lead the police to him that wouldn't involve like the police. Think about this: the police could fake set a house on fire because he's apparently a fireman, and he could show up to just do the stuff. You know, like here's another thing. Sorry, if I get back up, that reminds me of his job and then people's job and what that means. Stephen, in your youth, you worked for a little company called DQ.
Sure.
Now, imagine there was a mass murderer who loved having ice cream turned upside down and dipped into some butterscotch or some chocolate or something, right?
Oh, yeah. You know you want the butterscotch.
Yeah. Now imagine the FBI came into DQ and said, hey, we're going to set up a sting because we know the butcher is going to come into your DQ. Also, all of your employees are going to be in on it. So you, as a young individual, would you, A, feel comfortable working at DQ knowing that a mass murderer was going to come in? Like, I just feel like when you create a sting, you only have the key people involved, right?
Of course. Yeah.
You don't literally bring in every single employee. Because again, going back to clear and present danger stuff, like mass panic can ensue when everybody is like, oh shit, is that the killer? Is that the killer? Is that the killer? Oh my God, this guy could be the killer, right? Like, I just feel like so much stuff it's just silly
100%. Yeah, it makes no sense that they would tell everyone they were trying to get the butcher, right? You want to let as few people in as possible. And to answer your question, I would just say no, because I took the dairy program that we all take in school before I started working at Dairy Queen.
Nice.
Long walk. I have a high and a low that are both spoilery that I want to talk about. I'll start with the high. I think when Lady Raven gets to the house and wants to play the song for Riley, that is a great scene. Like that whole sequence where she's playing music, Josh Hartnett is recording her, and then she hatches a plan to get his phone. Brilliant. Loved it. Like I felt like the tension was working great. You know, my heart was pumping. I was into it. Again, I turned off my brain because if I rewound of why are we here, I'm like, no, just get out of there. Like clearly you're going to do better good by just leaving and immediately telling people where he lives. But I like that a lot. And I also really like the idea of her using her social platform to very quickly free this kid, right? Like it's kind of obvious, but I liked it. Like I thought it was clever, and it is a way again that she has power that he doesn't have. So I like that bit a lot. One thing that I didn't like by contrast, or well, a couple things. Thing I didn't like at all is anything involving the profiler. She is supposed to be this genius or whatever who knows exactly how to lure people out. And that scene at the end when he is talking to, quote, his mother, but it is actually her, in my head, it goes on for like 45 minutes. I know it doesn't. Yeah. I know it's just like 30 seconds, but it is so interminable and lacking in any suspense at all. It's just surprising to me that one person can write both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, and I will say, again, on paper, if you pitched me that Lady Raven is not only included in the thing, but there is a contingency that assumes there might be some point where she will have to face him, and the profiler's giving her the background to say he has all these mother issues, and if you take on the persona of his mother, you can gain control over the situation by punishing him for being bad. There is a world on paper in which that works. The premise of it is halfway decent.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
The execution of it is horrendous.
Right. Yeah. Real bad.
And even the twist of him going like, I see what you're trying to do. Like what you need in a situation like that is him acknowledging what she's trying to do, fighting against it, and then eventually it takes hold and she has him. But instead, he's supposed to be pretending that it won't work, but then it is work, but then haha, twist, it's not working, and now I'm gonna go kill. Like it didn't, that the pacing of like the way that scene is edited together, there is no ebb and flow. It's purely her doing a thing, which is kind of weird given the context of her lack of power in the situation already, and she never actually gains the upper hand. She just does it long enough for you to understand that the profiler coached her on what to do if she's ever literally in this exact situation. And then it just immediately is like, nope, and I'm just going to go on.
Yeah, it's extremely silly. And I feel like the movie does this a few times where it has a good idea, but then the more you know or what happens next negates the goodness of what happened before. Yeah. Like there was a moment that I really liked at the almost very, very end of this movie where while Josh Hartnett is being led away, he sees that his daughter's bike is laying down and he wants to go over and, you know, prop it up again. And that is... It's obvious, but it's like a good crystallization of the whole movie, right? It's like, even though he is a killer, he also cannot help but want his daughter to be happy. And like him being at that concert is metaphorically the same thing as him doing that, right? It's like him like, I know logically I should try to escape, but, and she'll understand, you know, she's not 5, like she'll make it home, you know, she'll be fine. But he just has to do the thing. But then, you know, 2 or 3 minutes later, we learned that actually, no, while he was doing that, he was pulling something out of the bike so he could break loose. So it's like the movie can't decide if he genuinely loves her or if he is just like a vicious killer with a master plan.
Well, no, I think that was symbolizing a different thing. That was symbolizing the OCD. the tipped over bike is as a non-organized object.
Of course.
And he had to pop it up and put down the kickstand so that there was order in the yard, not that her bike would be ready for her to ride it later, right?
But the thing is, he actually did that because he had a master plan to break out again, not because of his OCD.
Yeah. But to the people watching, they wouldn't stop him because it's fitting in line with what the profile was, that he has this compulsion to
I just
order
feel like
things.
when his wife is watching, the emotions of that moment are like he still wants to be a good dad, or like when he's confronted with the family standing in front of the garage while Lady Raven is escaping and he's trying to get away, he's like, don't forget to take out the trash, and on Wednesday the piano tuner's coming,
Yeah.
Like, there's this thing about his character that is like, I so want to be a good dad despite all of this. Anyway, I just felt like even the metaphorically interesting moments get negated when you think about it, because future things that he does just make him into this like supervillain who can walk through walls and do anything to escape and is always one step ahead of everybody, which is not the character that we've actually met, who is actually quite dumb in many ways.
I will say too that like, that he's going to escape, but the way they leave us is just that he's undone his handcuffs.
Right.
So in a different type of film with the same exact setup, there would be other guards in the back of the vehicle with him. So he escapes, knocks them out, gets a gun maybe, forces the driver to pull over the car, whatever, right? He's just locked in a back of a metal truck by himself. And hysterically laughing with himself, Joker style, and throwing the metal cuffs onto the metal floor of the metal truck, which is a sound that would ring into the driver's side. Yeah. Like it's just
clearly you want to pretend to keep the cuffs on and wait for them to lead you out, and then you strangle them or do something.
Yeah, it just
like we've
it's
all
just
been
wild.
Yeah, I mean it's a fine beat to end on, but again, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It almost feels like this was teeing up not just a sequel, but like it wanted him to be in the Split and Glass type universe or something as another like psychopath that could join forces. But Glass, the movie, already happened and like closed the loop on that stuff. So I don't really know. It feels like it wants there to be a sequel, but nothing about this movie screams sequel to me at all, except for that final moment.
You didn't see that the driver of that truck was Bruce Willis? No, I was kidding. Was there anything else? Oh, I will say you talked about liking the aspect of using your fame as a pop star to mobilize your TikTok audience or whatever, or Instagram Live audience to be able to go do things. Like, I like the cleverness of a character leveraging it, but I still feel like in our modern day where the Reddit world goes out and internet sleuths people like constantly day to day, like I feel like we have more signs of it going horribly wrong and accusing people who are not the correct people than it does to actually save the lives of anybody. So it felt like a little irresponsible, where I'm like, you're showing Lady Raven like exercising it in a great way, but the truth of the matter is
you're not showing the 1,000 of houses with blue doors that got decimated because of this statement.
Exactly. Like, how many perfectly well-meaning 30 to 50-year-old males out there got their doors kicked in?
I also feel like this might be petty, but I kept thinking it throughout the movie. First of all, I mean, I thought it in two different ways. The first thing I thought was when Josh Hartnett knew that they are hunting for the butcher, he should delete that app on his phone. Whatever the app is that like gives him a feed of his victim and also gives him the kill button or whatever. The second thing I thought is Lady Raven should delete that app off his phone when she's in the bathroom. And then the only way he can kill him is by going there, and that would give her enough time to call the police already, right? Like,
but she was so confident in her people that she knew that when he goes to say, and I'm going to kill the empty chair and undone handcuffs, that this guy, like, it was another way that she beats him. So, like,
sure. Yeah. Well, because the thing is, it would have made sense if when she was playing piano, he already pressed the button and, like, started the CO carbon monoxide killing, right? Because he he even says, like, you know how many minutes it takes for someone to die of carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide poisoning? Like,
Yeah.
but then after the bathroom, he looks at it and plans on killing him. So it's like he didn't do that the first time. So the idea that time was running out wasn't true anyway. Like, I don't know. There's just so much that, like, it was a cool moment, but it doesn't make sense.
So I thought for sure the payoff for that moment was going to be when he's talking about she was going to be the last one that he kills, and then he's going to kill himself to end the monstrosity that he is. I thought for sure that he was going to pull out like a canister with like the carbon dioxide in it and just go poof, and just open it and then kill them both inside the car, which would have been a dark as hell ending, but
Yeah.
also a pretty baller.
Yep. Totally. I mean, I also assumed, and I think the movie was trying to make us assume, after Lady Raven escapes, and then there's this big scene where everyone's waiting and the garage door opens, I assumed, like, he left the car running and killed himself, right? Like, it seemed like that was going to be how the movie ends. And then it goes on for, like, 25 more minutes of him escaping in different ways.
Yeah, then it gets real dumb.
Yeah.
One more thing about the phone thing is, like, I was wondering if it was edited differently for the trailer, but the movie plays out the exact same way. In a fucking crowded bathroom, he walks into a stall and opens an app with a guy moaning and crying.
Yeah, like, put in headphones. This isn't a reality show. You don't have to have it on speakerphone for the camera.
100%. Like, it was just a thing where I was like, what the hell? And then even later, he says something like, well, let me turn off the sound so he can't hear us. But, but like, no, the worry should be other people hearing him. Who cares if he hears you? You're the guy who, like, captured him.
Right. Yeah, doesn't make any sense. I mean, just learn some etiquette, you know?
Yeah.
Like if Joanna's trying to sleep at night, you know, if I want to listen to my victims, I put in headphones, right?
Yeah, obviously. And then every once in a while you realize that your headphones are paired to your IMAX still and not to not to your phone.
Yeah, those are awkward.
Okay, one more thought about cell phones, then I swear I'm done. This is I mean, this is a thing that I think most people don't think about, so I can't fault Josh Hartnett about it. But when you go to a concert, especially, every goddamn person around you is holding up their phone and recording shit, right? Which means anything you say out loud,
Of course.
is on all of their cell phones.
Yeah.
So literally when
His
he's like,
behavior is so suspicious, like, he would get caught in the aftermath anyway.
yeah. So like, he's literally, daughter, what do you see that passageway that goes under the stage? We should go down there and figure, like, even if he did go down there and escape, so many, like, afterwards are like, well, this thing was a sting. We didn't catch the guy, which means the one guy we didn't interview must be the killer. Did anybody see anybody being suspicious? They'd be like, yeah, there was this dude and his daughter. The dude kept escaping constantly and was talking about going underground and escaping that way. So I just think it's funny that there would have been lots of recordings of them.
100%. The last thing I will say, and I don't fault the movie for not doing this, it's just like it's a thing I felt emotionally like was supposed to happen, is Lady Raven has a song where she talks about, think about someone who hurt you and forgive them, right? And it's like this big moment where everyone in the audience does and lights up their phone. Why did that not pay off later? Like, it makes so much sense. Like, he doesn't forgive his mother. I assumed the movie was building towards Riley was going to figure out that something was not right, and in the end she was going to be the person who makes him, you know, like, she's learned
She kills Lady Raven.
Not kills Lady Raven, but like I thought maybe there would be a moment later where Riley looks at Josh Hartnett and has trouble forgiving him, and then Lady Raven reminds her of the song, or maybe that's the song she was going to play on piano. Like, there were so many things where I was like, you're clearly giving me this Chekhov's gun that later is going to mean something, and you're laying all the groundwork for, like, forgiveness of a person who hurt you to be, like, there's, like, many different ways it could pay off, and they just never return to it again. It surprised me.
Also, if this film thinks it's so, like, I would just think about, again, playing the song on the piano. What if, because the daughter knows all the lyrics by heart, right? So when she was singing the song, she could change certain words in the song to tell her.
Of course, she sends a message. Yeah.
Like,
it's so clear that that's what is supposed to happen in that moment.
yeah.
And honestly, and again, I really liked Saleka Shyamalan in this movie, so I have no problem with all the music being there. But those scenes existing as they do without having any hidden message only makes sense to me in a world where it's like your dad wanted as much of your music as possible to be in the movie, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because they linger so long to not have any plot payoff.
Yeah, unless her album comes out and you're listening and you're watching the lyrics and you go back and watch the movie and she did change it and it's a secret Easter egg that she was telling her the whole time. Remember the time that your dad was the butcher?
Yeah.
Good times. You gonna watch Trap 2?
Of course I am. Now, the big question, you always basically search for music, royalty-free music that we can play that is related in somehow to the movie. It has to be trap music, right? This time?
So I already found it. I already found a song called Move Silent from a band called HALP, which sounds like help.
Yeah.
But it's spelled HALP. But the lyric the episode starts with is something about the two sides of me and being bad or something like that.
Okay.
I forget exactly what the lines are. I got it like literally as we were sitting down to record.
Okay,
but
I'll
yeah.
allow it. But trap music would have been a funny meta joke.
It would have made sense. Yeah. All right, we done?
Oh, we're done.
Are we done, Steven? Or is the FBI going to bust into my door and shoot me with stun guns, or tasers, which apparently counteract the effects of drugs that are...
Yeah, I mean, that's when he just went in full beast mode, basically.
He rips off his mask and it's what... It
like, yeah,
literally
I
is
mean,
the
like,
Split guy.
he's even shirtless, you know? Like
Yeah.
It really feels like M. Night is dipping into that same terrain again.
Yeah, also, like, what was this movie rated? Was it PG-13?
Probably. It doesn't seem like it had anything R-worthy in it.
Yeah, I don't see... I don't have any... Oh, yeah, PG-13. So this movie's PG-13. If you're a murderer, I get taking off your shirt because you don't want blood on the clothes, because those are clothes you're going to have to clean and could lead to showing that you murdered people. But I feel like your jeans also soak up blood.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't you also take those off too?
I know this is just wishful thinking on your part now.
I'm just saying that if I'm gonna disrobe so that I can commit a murder, like I'm not gonna do it half-heartedly.
No, and
Josh
also
Hartnett.
this wasn't playing at Alamo, so like I had to pay a good like $15 to watch this movie. Like I should get to see Josh Hartnett take his jeans off. I'm with you. I understand.
100%. All right. On that note, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Enjoy the rest of the concert.